I want to start by saying I was a good daughter. Not perfect. Not a saint. Just good. The kind of daughter who stayed. Who washed the pill bottles. Who learned the names of meds with 14 letters. Who spooned pureed chicken into her mother's mouth while the rest of the family sent emoji prayers from cruise ships. My name's Martha. I'm 58. I live in western Pennsylvania, in the kind of rural town where everyone waves even when they don't like you and the neighbors think your business is theirs unless you make it very uncomfortable. I was my mother's full-time caregiver for 8 years. 8 years. My brother, Dean, and my sister, Cheryl, visited a combined total of 11 times in that span. And that's me being generous. Dean came once a year to take a selfie and post some caption like "Honor thy mother" while checking his email. Cheryl showed up only when Mom got hospitalized, swooped in, cried loudly in the waiting room, and left with a tote bag full of Tupperware and pity. Meanwhile, I was wiping adult diapers, emptying catheter bags, rubbing cracked skin with lavender lotion, and sleeping in a recliner because the baby monitor on the nightstand picked up every cough like a gunshot. I lost a job. I lost friends. I lost time. But I never complained. Not once. Because it was my mother. And I loved her. Mom died quietly in March. It was 2:27 a.m. I was holding her hand. She was thin like a matchstick and warm and still. I remember thinking, it's done. She's free. And maybe now I can finally rest. Spoiler. I was wrong. See, here's where the estate comes in. Mom had a will. Originally, it split the house equally 3 ways. That was the deal. That was always the deal. The house sat on just under 3 acres, old brick farmhouse, passed down from our grandparents. It needed work, but it was home. Mom used to joke, "Promise me you'll let the ghosts keep the front porch." I thought we were good. But after the funeral, where Dean gave a speech he copy-pasted from a TED Talk and Cheryl made it all about how hard this has been for her, they pulled me aside in the kitchen. Dean cleared his throat like a smug little banker and said, "Hey, so, about the house. We had Mom sign something a few months back. Just a change to make things easier." Cheryl said, "We didn't want to stress you out. You were doing so much." They showed me a copy of a quitclaim deed. Signed. Notarized. Transferring full ownership of the house to Cheryl. Not to the 3 of us. Just her. Dean waved it off. "She's gonna handle selling it. Then we'll all get our share." It just made more sense this way, for probate, for taxes. I asked why they didn't tell me before. They said, "You were too emotional." Reader, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded, and then I went into the guest bathroom and threw up so hard I popped a blood vessel in my eye. The next week, they had a buyer. Cash offer. Some property developer who wanted to flip it. They gave me 30 days to pack my things. The house I gave up 8 years of my life for gone. No room for negotiation. Cheryl signed the final paperwork while texting her yoga instructor. Dean got his cut directly wired into his renovation fund for a lake house he's been whining about since 2016. And me? I got a gift basket from Cheryl with essential oils and a card that said, "You did so much. Hope you can finally find you again." I wanted to burn it. Instead, I smiled. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like a scream. Sometimes it starts with a for rent sign and a spreadsheet. Because 2 weeks later, I found out the house next door to Dean's was available. 3-bedroom. Small yard. Elderly couple moved to Florida. Cheap rent, and the landlord was a nice retired mechanic who didn't ask too many questions. I signed the lease the same day. Dean didn't even notice when I moved in. Why would he? He only visits the house on weekends when he's trying to impress clients or make country content for his Instagram. But he noticed the day the sign went up. Chestnut Grove in-home hospice, compassion lives here. See, I'd earned my CNA license quietly during the last year of Mom's care. Took night classes. Online certifications. Learned the laws. And Pennsylvania allows in-home hospice services on private residential property if zoning permits and the primary caregiver is licensed. Guess what? It did. I was. So I started taking clients. Slowly, quietly. The neighborhood didn't mind. Most people were sweet. One lady brought us pie. Another offered extra linens. But Dean? Dean looked out his window one morning and saw 2 hospice aides wheeling in a hospital bed. And panicked. He came by, tried to act chill. Hey, what's going on here? I smiled. Just giving back, Dean. You know, since you never had the time. He looked like someone just slapped a raccoon onto his lawn. That was the first crack. There would be more. Because I knew his secrets. And this? This was just the start. You know that feeling when a child drops a glass and it shatters, but they try to pretend it didn't happen? That's what Dean looked like every time he stepped outside now. Stiff neck, little fake cough, refusing to look directly at the house next door, my house, where a hospice nurse parked each morning at 7:50 a.m., regular as coffee and communion. Chestnut Grove wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. I took in 2 patients at a time, both terminal, both requiring low-level care. The kind of folks who didn't want to die in a hospital. They just wanted quiet, comfort, a little dignity. I gave it to them. I gave them everything I couldn't give my mother because I'd been too tired, too alone, too desperate for help that never came. The first woman, Marlene, had colon cancer and a mouth like a trucker. She called me Mighty Martha and said if the afterlife had a reception desk, I'd be the one answering it, with snacks. She died peacefully. Her daughter brought me flowers and said, she smiled all the way to the end. I hadn't seen that in years. Meanwhile, Dean kept twitching. Because the local paper ran a little piece, small-town hospice making big impact. There was a photo of me in my scrubs, holding Marlene's hand, with the sign behind us in clear view. Dean called me that night. Hey, so I've been getting questions. People think you, opened a hospital? On my street. Nope, I said sweetly. Just a residential care program. All perfectly legal. I made sure of it. You're doing this to mess with me. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, Dean, not everything is about you. Some of us just have a calling. Click. Good. Because I did have a calling now. To peel them back like wallpaper. Let's talk about Cheryl for a minute. Remember how she took the house? Played the martyr? Well, Cheryl lives exactly 48 minutes away in Allegheny County, in a big stucco number with a glass staircase, and one of those stupid, live, laugh, love decals in the kitchen. She's married to David. Investment banker. Talks like every sentence is a TED Talk audition. Wears sweaters around his neck like it's still 1983. Cheryl called me after the hospice article ran. Not to say congratulations. Oh no. She said, you know this is temporary, right? I mean, it's sweet what you're doing. But you're not exactly cut out for business. I thanked her for the unsolicited career coaching. Then I started digging. Because when you take care of someone in decline for 8 years, you learn to notice things. You hear half conversations. You get glimpses of receipts. You remember names that seem unimportant at the time. And I remembered something. Back in 2019, Cheryl had a weekend away during a marriage break. Mom had said, your sister's staying at that cottage near Seven Springs. Says it's for clarity. Except she wasn't alone. And I knew that because she forgot to log out of Facebook on my iPad after showing Mom some family photos. Guess what I found in her message history? Photos. Messages. Receipts. From David's coworker. I took screenshots. Then I waited. Because revenge, when it's good, isn't about big dramatic gestures. It's about small, patient leaks. In the meantime, I hosted a community open house at Chestnut Grove. Offered tea. Invited neighbors. Spoke about elder care and end-of-life options. I wore my softest sweater and made lemon bars with powdered sugar crosses on them. Guess who showed up? David. Not Cheryl. David, who smiled too hard, clapped too loudly, and pulled me aside to say, "This is really something, Martha. You know, I always said you had more in you than people realized." I smiled like butter wouldn't melt in my mouth and said, "You know, David, you're right. People never expect what I'm capable of." He left looking like he'd seen a ghost. I wasn't sure if he'd figured out I knew. But soon, I'd make sure they both did. In the meantime, I submitted a tip to the zoning office anonymously. Cheryl had installed an outdoor kitchen and a guest house on her property. No permits. I knew this because she bragged about it on Instagram stories, where she showed off her DIY escape suite. Oops. She was fined $8,600. Texted me, "Was this you?" I texted back, "I don't even know what zoning is. Sounds technical." She didn't reply. But she stopped posting her gratitude walks. Dean, meanwhile, was looking more and more unwell. And I wasn't done with him either. Because Dean had a past. And that past? Lived in my hospice home. If you've never sat in a quiet room with a dying person who knows they're dying, you've missed one of the rarest kinds of truth this world offers. They have no reason to lie. No shame left to protect. No time to manipulate. They just tell it. Which is exactly what happened when Lydia moved in. Lydia came to Chestnut Grove in late September. Pancreatic cancer. Mid-60s. Fierce and dry-witted, the kind of woman who smokes in the wind so the ashes blow behind her like a flag. She was referred through a nurse I used to know from Mom's early treatment days. Low drama, they told me. Sharp as a tack. Just wants peace. She arrived with one small suitcase and a tin of lemon cookies. No family listed. Until 2 days later, when I heard her say the name, Dean Rollins. I was standing just outside her room, checking her vitals log. "Oh, that one," she said, laughing weakly to the nurse. "Yeah, I used to date him. In my 20s. Knew him before he grew into that cheap used car salesman soul of his." I blinked. "Wait, Dean? My Dean?" I stepped inside. "Sorry, did you say Dean Rollins?" She gave me a look. "Yeah, you know him." I smiled. "You could say that." Lydia grinned. "I could say a lot more." I let her. Turns out, Lydia dated Dean before he met his wife. She was 22. He was 26. It was one of those small-town flings that turn into almost engagements until she got pregnant. Yeah, pregnant. Dean told her to handle it. And when she didn't, he vanished. Ghosted her. Blocked her number. Told mutual friends she was unstable. She miscarried a month later. Had no family support. Ended up moving 3 counties over and restarting her whole life. And now, nearly 40 years later, here she was. Living next door to the man who thought her memory would rot away like old meat. I didn't tell her I was his sister. Not yet. I wanted to hear her unfiltered. She spoke about him with a kind of detached fury, like someone who didn't hate him anymore, just remembered everything. He had that slick way of talking. You know what I mean? Like he was always 10 minutes ahead of your guilt. Yeah, I knew. I debated whether to tell her who I was. But before I could, Dean came over. It was late. Around 8 p.m. I was just finishing up Lydia's meds. He knocked on my door with that tight-lipped fake concern look, holding a bag of cookies from the bakery I knew he didn't go to unless he was buttering someone up. "Hey," he said, "I just thought I'd stop by and see if you needed anything." "Sure," I said. "Want to meet one of our new residents?" He hesitated. I don't want to intrude." "Oh, come on. She's real sweet." I walked him in. He stepped into Lydia's room, and she looked up, and her face went still. Dean paled. She squinted. "Dean?" He nodded slowly, like he wanted to pretend he wasn't sure. "Lydia? Oh my God. You look like hell," she said cheerfully. I bit my cheek so I wouldn't laugh. He tried to recover. "Wow, it's been years." "Decades," she corrected. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again, but hey, here you are. Living next door to my deathbed. Life's hilarious." He laughed. It was a nervous, brittle sound. Well, it was nice seeing you, he said, already halfway to the door. She didn't even look up again. After he left, I brought her tea. You know him well? She asked. I sat down, looked her straight in the eye. He's my brother. Lydia blinked. And then she howled. Full on, belly laughing, gasping for air laughter. Oh, girl, she said, wiping her eyes. You got some stories, don't you? You could say that. We talked for 2 more hours. I told her what he did to me. To Mom. About the will. The estate. Cheryl's scheming. She just nodded, sipping her tea, looking like a general surveying a war map. He always did think he was untouchable, she said. You want help bringing him down? I raised an eyebrow. You serious? Oh, honey. I've got less than 6 months and no heirs. What are they gonna do, sue my corpse? Lydia had stories, photos, letters, proof. I scanned everything, uploaded it to a secure drive, printed copies, created a little black binder with a sticker on the front. For Dean in case of karma. Because when he showed up to the next HOA meeting trying to pitch his new rural Airbnb plan, I'd be ready. And when Cheryl tried to throw a charity brunch with that fake Christian influencer crowd she loved so much, I had one more seat to fill. But for now, I just sat with Lydia, held her hand, and watched the man who thought he erased his past see it move in next door and unpack its bag. Let me tell you something about my sister Cheryl. She thinks reputation is a God-given accessory, like eyebrows or good bone structure. She doesn't earn hers. She curates it. From the second she took Mom's house, Cheryl's whole identity became influencer light for the 40-something suburban evangelicals. Instagram account with filtered devotionals. Daily affirmations in cursive. Hashtags like #FaithAndFlax and #HomeIsWhereTheHearth is. And then came the brunch. Oh, the brunch. A charity gathering for local women to support breast cancer awareness. Sounds noble, right? Except Cheryl didn't organize it to help anyone. She did it to get tagged in photos next to a minor reality TV housewife from Pittsburgh who was making the rounds on a local fundraising circuit. The location? Her patio, the one she built illegally, with the fire pit she never got permitted. Remember that little zoning tip-off I filed? Still pending. I wasn't invited. Of course. But I didn't need to be. Because David, her husband, remember? The smug sweater-wrapped sycophant was now deep in I'm not getting caught mode. He hadn't said a word to Cheryl about the affair proof I had on him. But his DMs showed he'd been reading every post in the Chestnut Grove weekly updates I'd been publishing online for families of our residents. And wouldn't you know it? He RSVP'd to the brunch. So I made a move. I printed up a little packet. Screenshots of Cheryl's DMs from her affair. Her receipts from the couple's weekend under a different name. And her rants about church people being sheep from the Notes app she left open on Mom's iPad. Yes, I still had the screenshots. Slipped it all in a soft pink folder. Wrote to the ladies who worship fake women in big Sharpie on the front. And I asked Lydia's niece, who was in town for a few days, to swing by Cheryl's brunch and accidentally leave it on a table near the wine bar. She did. The folder was opened. And within 30 minutes, Cheryl's perfectly staged brunch became a whispering, finger-pointing disaster. The influencer? Left early. 3 women suddenly remembered they had prior commitments. And Cheryl? She called me that night, voice tight as a drumhead. What did you do? Me? I said. I was just next door. Folding laundry. You've ruined everything. You started it, sis. Click. She didn't go online for a week. Deleted most of her social posts. Claimed it was a mental health break. I figured I'd let her sweat for a bit. Now let's talk about Dean. Our dear, flustered, deeply unraveling Dean. He'd been pitching his idea for turning the family land, the part he did keep, into an upscale cabin rental experience for tech detox retreats. Of course, that meant pitching it to locals, you know, The people who still remember him stealing lawn signs in high school and pretending he invented composting. But he made one fatal mistake. He invited the county planning board to a preview of his concept. Held in his yard. Catered. Lawn signs. PowerPoint. And wouldn't you know it, David was there too. Of course he was. He loves a networking opportunity like a cat loves a warm laptop. And who else was there? Lydia. We wheeled her over with her oxygen tank and her sunglasses, like royalty. She sat through Dean's whole pitch, sipping lemon water, not saying a word. Then, when he finished, she raised one hand and said, "Question. Are guests allowed to stay on land purchased through estate manipulation?" Dean froze. Smiled. Sorry." She continued, loud and clear. "I mean, if someone illegally manipulated their dying mother into signing away property, does that land qualify for commercial zoning?" Someone from the board coughed. David looked like he'd swallowed a bug. Dean went beet red. He tried to brush it off. "That's a private family matter." "Good," she said, sipping again. "So is dying. And you've got experience running from both." The silence was titanic. I didn't even need to say anything. Just sat in my folding chair next to her, smiling sweetly. Dean didn't get his zoning approval. In fact, the county followed up with a formal inquiry into the estate records. Apparently, notarizing a quitclaim deed when the signer is under hospice care raises questions. Oops. Funny how people call you bitter only after they've taken everything sweet. Cheryl and Dean had always been the successful ones. The polished, high-functioning, Instagram-smiling children who could make their lives look flawless in 2 seconds flat. I was the one who stayed home, the one who wasted her degree to take care of Mom, the one who didn't push hard enough. Now, Dean's name was being whispered in church halls and city offices. Cheryl's brunch clique stopped tagging her in photos. And me? Well, Chestnut Grove had a waiting list. But even I didn't expect Cheryl to crack so loudly. It happened 2 days after the zoning inquiry opened on Dean. I was baking banana bread for Lydia, who'd just gotten out of a rough chemo appointment, when I saw Cheryl pull into my driveway. Fast. Like tires on gravel fast. She stomped to the porch in Lululemon and rage, holding a thick stack of papers. She shoved them toward me. "You want this? You win. Take it." I flipped through the first page. It was the deed. Mom's house. Cheryl was signing it over. To me. "I'm done," she hissed. "Everyone thinks I'm some manipulative gold digger. I can't show my face at church. David's staying at a hotel. I had to cancel my juice sponsorship." She started crying. Real, messy crying. Now I'm not heartless. I almost felt bad. But then I remembered the smell of Mom's bedroom. The ache in my spine from sleeping upright for years. The way Cheryl took that house and handed me a basket of essential oils like it was payment. So I took the papers. I said, "Thanks. I'll need your notarized signature on page 6. She gasped like I slapped her. "You always hated me," she snapped. I looked her in the eyes. Calm. Clear. "No. I just finally stopped pretending you were worth loving unconditionally." She left without another word. Dean, meanwhile, tried a different tactic. He emailed me. Not called. Emailed. Subject line, "Can we talk like adults?" The body of the email was a hilarious cocktail of victimhood and veiled threats. "This has gone far enough. We're family. You've made your point. Lydia's dead now, so I assume her drama dies with her? I'd really appreciate it if you stopped poisoning the well. I'm trying to build something here." I didn't reply. I did forward it to the county clerk. Because the best part? Lydia had left me her journals. Oh yes. She was a writer. She documented everything. Her pregnancy. Dean's name. The miscarriage. The medical bills. The months she waited for him to call. The spiral. The way her whole life shifted because one selfish boy disappeared when it got hard. And now that boy wanted to build healing retreats. I gave the journals, select excerpts only, to the local paper. The same one that had once featured Chestnut Grove in a feel-good Sunday column. They ran it. Front page. Deathbed confession exposes past of local developer. They didn't name Dean. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. By the end of the week, his business lost 3 clients. By the end of the month, he listed his house for a fresh start. And me? I closed on Mom's house again. But I didn't move in. I donated it to a nonprofit that provides end-of-life care training and low-income caregiver respite. They turned it into a community resource center. They named it after Mom. The Ruth Rollins Dignity House. Her name's on the sign, carved in cedar, facing the road. And when Cheryl drives by, she'll remember what she took and what I reclaimed. There's a kind of silence that comes after war. Not the peaceful kind. Not yet. More like the space between thunder and the rain. When everything's waiting to see what grows in the crater. That's what my life felt like after I took the house back. After Cheryl gave up, after Dean fled town, after Lydia died holding my hand like she trusted me with the weight of her whole past, I stood on the porch of the home I once cared for my mother in and asked myself, now what? Chestnut Grove still ran. My 2 beds stayed filled. The waiting list kept growing. I trained a second nurse, took a few days off each month, even went on a little road trip to a lakeside cabin where no one knew my name. But something still sat in my ribs like a stone. It was Mom. She never saw this part. Never knew what they did to me. Never got to see the justice. But I like to believe she'd be proud. Not because I won, but because I never stooped to their level. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I planned. I endured. I struck when it mattered. She always said, mercy isn't weakness. It's knowing how strong you are and choosing not to use it all the time. I gave them mercy, but only after I gave them hell. Dean lives in Kentucky now. Works at a car dealership. Changed his last name on Facebook. His latest girlfriend is half his age and calls herself a healing crystal therapist. I give it a year. Cheryl is still local. Quieter. She started volunteering, probably to rebuild her social rep. She avoids me. But I saw her once at a farmer's market. We locked eyes across a stand of tomatoes. She nodded. I nodded back. Nothing more. We both knew. It was over. She lost. But I didn't need her apology anymore. Because every woman who comes through my home now gets what Mom never did: company, comfort, someone to hold their hand until the last breath. No dark rooms. No isolation. No waiting for children who never come. I sit with them. I tell them stories. Not about my revenge. That part's mine. But I tell them about endurance. About grit. About the fact that, sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody counted on. The quiet woman with the calendar and the long memory. One day, a younger nurse asked me why I stayed here. Why I didn't leave once the storm passed. I said, because I was forged in that storm. And now this land is mine. Not just by deed, but by fire, blood, and choice. And in the end, I rebuilt everything they tried to take from me. But better. Cleaner. On my terms. Postscript. Sometimes I sit on the porch of Ruth Rollins' Dignity House with a glass of sweet tea and a notebook. I watch the cars go by. Occasionally, someone stops to ask what this place is. I tell them, it's where the forgotten are remembered, where the unthanked are honored, and where you don't get away with screwing over the woman who did all the work. Because legacy, like revenge, is quiet, but it echoes forever.